Hello viewers. Today we are going to talk about The 11th Hour, an American documentary released in 2007. The 11th Hour is about the converging ecological crisis of the earth, which also encourages the audience to join the movement for environmental sanity. It is co-created, produced, co-written and narrated by the Hollywood film star Leonardo Di Caprio. It was directed by Leila Petersen and Nadia, funded by Adam Lewis and Pierre André Senizergues, and distributed by Warner Independent Pictures. Its world premiere was at the 60th Annual Cannes Film Festival, May 2007. It was released on August 2007, in the same year in which the fourth assessment report of the United Nations Global Warming Panel IPCC was published, and about a year after Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, a renowned film documentary about global warming. The contents of the film is mostly based on interviews of over 50 experts, including world-known politicians, scientists, and environmental activists. Some of the noteworthy experts consulted are former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, physicist Stephen Hawking, Nobel Prize winner Wangari Maathai, and journalists Armand Betscher and Paul Hawken. The film documents the grave problems that the planet's life systems are facing. Global warming, deforestation, mass species extinction, and depletion of the ocean's habitats are all focused. The film emphasizes that the future of humanity is in jeopardy. The film also suggests potential solutions to these problems. These are well-thought strategies for restorative action by the reshaping and rethinking of global human activity through technology, social responsibility, and conservation. At this point, let's take a quiz. Who is the narrator of the 11th hour? The choices are A. Brad Pitt, B. Keanu Reeves, C. George Clooney, and D. Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm sure you know the answer. It is D. Leonardo DiCaprio. The 11th hour features qualified experts from nearly every field of science. In between the interviews, it uses revealing graphics showing the widespread decline of our natural resources and shocking images of people being swept away in floods, fires, and drought, among other natural disasters. Despite being fact-based and educational, the film presents a strong narrative using the motivation and emotion framework that moves the viewer and makes a powerful, shocking case for saving the planet. The narrative begins with the setting, which is broadly in this case the Earth. However, the filmmakers are able to shrink that to a much emotional and sentimental place by referring to it as our only home. This rhetoric capitalizes on humans' deep attachment to and comfort associated with the idea of a home. All natural creatures, humans included, are instinctively and fiercely protective of their home, leading the viewer to wonder why we are not doing more to protect our true home of planet Earth. To enhance the setting, The film is laced with striking images that contrast the awing beauty of nature with both the massive destruction humans are inflicting upon it and nature's violent responses. They also stress the notion that we, along with all inhabitants of the earth, exist in an interconnected ecosystem, the web of life. They highlight the numerous species we have driven to extinction through our unsustainable consumerism and reiterate that we are essentially driving ourselves to extinction. As one commentator emotionally and threateningly puts it, we are our greatest weapons of mass destruction. The film begins with scientific experts and other academics discussing how they each individually believe that the earth is in grave danger, igniting fear into the viewer for the fate of both current and future generations. They passionately tell a story that features man as the main character who views himself as superior to and disconnected from nature and the web of life in which we exist. This accelerated disconnection from nature and humans' natural tendency to be opportunistic creatures are cited as the driving force behind the planet's demise. As one commentator puts it, the problem is in the way humans think. It is deeply rooted in our culture. Experts then take the viewer through the plot of humanity's very short existence on earth that has led us to this point. Man's reliance on simply direct sunlight for food, warmth, wood for shelter, and other life necessities, which kept population below 1 billion. The discovery of ancient sunlight in the form of carbon-rich oil and coal reserves that allowed man to advance and grow. The Industrial Revolution, driven by these oil reserves and highlighted by the invention of the steam engine, which they note as a turning point. These, among other events, are simply the rising action of the story. The film suggests that the climax of human story on earth has not yet been reached, but when it is, there will be massive and widespread destruction, hunger, and expenses to pay. In this part of the film, the man is clearly the antagonist who fights against the earth and tries to dominate it rather than existing peacefully within the encompassing ecosystem. Towards the end of the 11th hour, the narrative begins to change, however. Commentators portray humans as having all the capacity to be heroic protagonists and do right by nature. Our innovative minds have already created so much useful technology which are simply not employing to full potential, and numerous scientists reveal through data how we can reduce our carbon footprint. Most importantly, the potential for further innovation is limitless. It is the institutionalized obstacles and short-sightedness of politicians and industry that hinder our advancement toward a better future, which calls for a large cultural shift in values and how we perceive our place within nature. This switch to an optimistic tone and glimmer of hope is imperative, for the situation must appear dire but not entirely beyond repair in order to motivate people to do their part. The 11th hour strategically instills through a man versus nature and a motivational and emotional narrative the right amount of fear, protectiveness, duty, and hope into the hearts of viewers to encourage them to take action today and be the inspiring generation that mobilized collectively to save our beautiful home, the earth. Time for another quiz. In the 11th hour, the ancient sunlight refers to A. Heat stored in Earth's crust, B. Old solar panels, C. Fossil fuel, and D. Solar charged batteries. And you guessed it right, it is C. Fossil fuel. Now let's have an analytical discussion about this film. Directors Leila Petersen and Nadia do a fine job of highlighting the grassroots activists and keeping the famous narrator's role modest. DiCaprio is limited to a half dozen on-screen appearances. He is seen darkly scanning the Manhattan skyline and admiring the California coastline. With an angry squint and a furrowed brow, he blames political and corporate leaders for failing to confront our ecological crisis. Most of the talking is done by the prominent long-time environmental leaders such as Paul Hawken, Paul Stamets, David Suzuki, Betsy Taylor, Bill McDonough, Thom Hartmann, Omar Freila, and Mikhail Gorbachev. The interviews are spliced with what has become the default aesthetic of environmental documentaries, coupling awe-inspiring shots of our beautiful planet with the just plain awful sights of how we are cannibalizing it. The film's best trait is the passion of its experts. The talking heads don't just deliver facts, they make arguments demanding that the audience listen to their warnings. The genuine feeling displayed by the interviews gives the film an emotional depth that hopefully will be contagious and will prompt viewers to leave the theater with a new commitment to environmental defense. Because, as this urgent film shows, time is quickly running out. The film has strong visual impact. Visually speaking, the 11th hour explicitly condemns the horrors of the present, namely human actions involving the destruction of other life forms and the precipitation of catastrophic climate change. The opening scenes, which are accompanied by a jarring mechanical noise and score, offer grotesque images of forest wildfires, meat processing, and industrial pollution, among other human transgressions against life. Thom Hartmann drives home this sense of unease during an interview early in the film through describing Earth as an infected organism. Later, Stephen Hawking echoes this sentiment, his reflections supported by images of the Earth taken from space lit up at night due to inordinate electrical use. These images powerfully suggest that humans are a malignant growth on the planet's surface. The role of the media has also been emphasized. The mass media, organs of the mainstream culture, are called out by DiCaprio for lulling people into apathetic dispositions. As he explains, while the media sometimes features ecological disasters, they consistently frame these as isolated incidents. This way, audiences remain unaware that they are facing a catastrophic global problem that calls for radical intervention. DiCaprio thus suggests in his narration that the media are at least partly to blame for the general public's obliviousness to the climate crisis, getting the viewer to remember that each human being forms part of the web of life on earth is a major theme of the 11th hour, and this informs many of the film's critical reflections on time. So let's talk about the time factor. Very interesting reflections on geological time are offered in the 11th hour. The environmentalist Paul Hawken, interviewed in the film, explains that humans are the product of the formation of a cell 40 million centuries ago, and reminds the viewers that the majority of our cells are not human, that within us is the backstory of life on earth. Natural sciences author Janine Benyus then identifies the place of the human species in geological time, reminding viewers that we are an incredibly young species, having emerged on the planet very late. In a hypothetical calendar year, humans have arisen only at 15 minutes before midnight on 31st December.
We got here 15 minutes before midnight on December 31st, and all of recorded history has blinked by in the last 60 seconds.
So the film recognizes the split between nature and human. Nathan Gardles discusses the big rupture that occurred between humankind and nature due to the mechanization and industrialization. With his commentary complemented by images of automation, Gardles identifies this rupture as temporal and spatial. Humankind's mode of existence split off from earlier forms and rhythms of life, which were generally regenerative, and nature quite suddenly became reframed as a mere resource, and progress redefined as limitless growth. The human forgetfulness is also important. Environmental activist David Suzuki explicitly ties the environmental crisis to forgetfulness, asserting that we have forgotten ancient truths, ancient wisdoms that kept us plugged into nature, and that helps us to grasp that if we do something to offend the natural world, we are gonna pay a price for that. Humans have been referred to as the third chimpanzee in this documentary. Ecologist Stuart Prim asserts that humans are actually the third chimpanzee, part of the evolutionary chain rather than separate from or superior to it, while he also indicates our uniqueness, highlighting our extraordinary ability to make tools and engage in sophisticated communication. He maintains, however, that our employment of these capacities has to date been catastrophic, and that unless we change radically, a third, maybe a half of all the varieties of life on earth will be lost. The title of the film is also related to evolutionary time. Finally, the ecologist Peter Warshall overtly associates the film title with evolutionary time when he advances that this can't be an 11th hour for the Earth as a planet, but that we are facing a calamitous extinction crisis and a harmony crisis as we, one species, have taken over just about everything. These commentaries and the frequent inclusion of highly evocative accompanying images focus the viewer's attention on human beings' transgression against the evolutionary unfolding of time itself. The film got several important awards and got good critical response. In March 2008, the 11th Hour was awarded the prestigious Earthwatch Environmental Film Award at National Geographic in Washington, D.C. The film received generally favorable reviews from critics with a 67% score on Rotten Tomatoes, 63% on Metacritic, and 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb, International Movie Database. Kevin Crust, a critic from the Los Angeles Times, rated this film highly. At the end, let us see a quote from Leonardo Di Caprio himself. Global warming is not only the number one environmental challenge we face today, but one of the most important issues facing all of humanity. We all have to do our part to raise awareness about global warming and the problems we as a people face in promoting a sustainable environmental future for our planet. We will wind up with the last quiz. The International Film Festival that first showed the 11th Hour was A. Cannes, B. Tokyo, C. Berlin, D. Venice. Obviously, the answer is A. Cannes. Thanks for listening.